is the Final Lap Weekly, a show where a couple of guys talk all things NASCAR. My name is Kerry Murphy. I'm a longtime host of All Things The Final Lap. Our co-host for the show is Toby Christie, founder and editor-in-chief at TobyChristieCom and now RacingAmerica.com. Man, this is going to be awesome. But first, we've got to talk about our sponsors. We've got a few people that like to sponsor our show, and part of the deal is they get to be added here at the top.
Yeah, and I mean, it really is cool. I don't know how many other shows have people that are this dedicated to the show that listen to it.
Right.
But it is kind of like one of those pinch me moments that people care this much about what we do to contribute to the show in this level. So it's really, really cool to do. And so that being said, let's go through the folks that do contribute to this show. What do you think, Gary? Sound good?
Contribute!
And of course, these are our folks that contribute at the level of sponsorship. So the higher tiers. So we mentioned these folks at the top of the show. We've got Devin sitting there. We appreciate you, Devin. We've got Louisville Max. Met him over at Indianapolis. Really, really cool to see. We've got David Letchworth. He's back. He's the man, the myth, the legend over there. He is a longtime listener to the show, and he's back as a sponsor. So thank you, David. We appreciate you. And Joe Bike, the longest tenured sponsor of the show. Joe Bike, we appreciate you as well. Every one of you guys, thank you so much. And we'll get into the entire list of Patreon subscribers at the end of the show. But that's our sponsors. Back to you, Kerry.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see that kind of level of commitment to us, and you know, we're putting decent stuff out every week. I mean, it's not great, it's decent.
At least you're honest, I guess, right?
It depends on the week. I mean, it depends on our moods, and you know,
a lot of
how Denny Hamlin did any particular week.
Yeah, a lot of it's predicated upon what we have to talk about. So we're kind of limited in what we can do based on what there is to talk about. But I think we do the best we can with what we've got.
Well, let's talk Watkins Glen because, man, lots of stuff happened there in terms of playoff implications and winners and stuff.
Yes. So we've got a few things that have happened. Now, of course, the race itself. What did you think, Kerry?
Dare I say
it boring?
Was, well, I mean, I don't know. It's a part of me is like, do I say it's boring because there was no wrecks or anything going on? Or was it just good racing and that's, you know, or do we need these caution flags for the stages? Or I don't know. I don't
think we need stage cautions. We need a package that works at these road courses and short tracks. I would love to say that this was a good race because there weren't cautions and there was just great competition the whole rest of the way, but there were no passes inside the top 6 in those last 20 laps at all. There were no passes inside the top 11. Right, so it's kind of like 11.
Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I hate it. I don't like to see it. And I hate saying that I hate it, but yeah, I came away from Watkins Glen, a track that I'm usually very excited to see because it usually puts on really good action. A sold-out crowd there at Watkins Glen to check it out. And I felt we had a subpar product in the closing laps. Beginning of the race was pretty good. I will say the first couple stages of this thing were pretty good. But then you get to the end there, and it just really was not very compelling. But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it is what it is. I forgot to turn on my fancy lights. There we go.
Ooh,
now you can see my shiny head.
I was surprised I wasn't getting the Z's from you in the text messages throughout the race.
I think because I actually fell asleep.
Oh, well, see, there it is.
So I couldn't even get to it.
We need to know.
Exactly. All right, let's run things down 10-1. We've got Joey Logano at number 10.
And, you know, he's a guy who's pretty good at road courses that people don't really talk about as being good at road courses, but he always kind of sneaks up in there. 10th place, pretty good. Not great, but pretty good.
No, not at all. And then he got his teammate, Ryan Blaney, who, you know, also pretty good, not great.
Yeah, I mean, you expect more, but I think he'll take it. Like, if you told him going into the weekend he'd be 9th, I think he would take it, especially if we're kind of closing on Daytona this week, a place he's really good at. Going into the playoffs, I think he'd take it, but I think he'd want more.
Yeah, for sure. And then Tyler Reddick, I think that's a disappointment right there.
That is. Now, that's the biggest one. When you circle it, you're like, man, you go into a road course race, you expect Tyler Reddick's going to be in the mix for the win. He just is so good. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but they just did not bring a race-winning car this time around. And the Toyotas have been really fast lately. We get to the summer months, and they're usually really, really good. So it is interesting to see that Tyler Reddick just, you know, came out and laid an 8th place finish on the table there.
We got to Chris Buescher, though. You know, he's He's getting his own reputation on road courses.
Yeah, he's getting his reputation everywhere, it seems, at this point. My goodness, he won Michigan, won Richmond, and he's always running well at road courses. So, and we know he's good
Yeah.
at the plate races too. So, he's one of those guys that's very well rounded at this point, and a real threat, I think, once the playoffs do start. I really like what we're seeing out of them. He is top 10 week in and week out all of a sudden, and another one here at Watkins Glen.
Martin Truex Jr. at number 6. He was also very good at the. It's almost like every driver these days is pretty good at the road courses.
It is a complete different microcosm than what we saw several years ago. You look back at the late 90s, early 2000s, it was just show up and survive, get through the 2 road course races, and run everywhere else and battle for a championship. Nowadays, these are opportunities. The drivers see these as opportunities, especially with the win and you're in situation. You go to these things, you run well, you have a chance to be in the playoffs no matter how bad your season's been to that point. And people have really dedicated their craft to it, and a lot of them have gotten way, way better, and it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Ty Gibbs. I mean, isn't he new to this whole thing?
Yeah, so he's Rookie of the Year contender. I will say he's very talented on road courses. You look at what he did in the Xfinity Series. First start ever came at Daytona Road, and he won that thing. So the guy is very skilled, and he's really – it's a shame that the regular season has to end this week because I don't know if he's going to get in the playoffs, but he's definitely competing lately at a level where he deserves to be in playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And then AJ Allmendinger, I mean, he's always up there at road courses. Actually, maybe not so much. You expect him to be up there, but sometimes he's just out to lunch or bad strategy play or overdrives the car, but he should be up there.
Yeah, for sure. And he was up there this time. I was hoping for a late race caution because I thought we got a late race caution. I felt he was the guy that could go into turn 1 and do something crazy, trying to make a hero move to try to make a playoff run. It might not have panned out, but it would have been exciting one way or the other. And that was the thing that I was like, man, if we get a late race caution, him sitting 3rd or 4th, that is really intriguing because he's a guy who knows how to do what he needs to do to at least try to put himself in a position to win on a late race restart at Watkins Glen. But we never got it, so it is what it is. But he finished 4th and another good run for AJ Allmendinger.
Christopher Bell at number 3.
Yeah, and he's another guy that, like these other guys we talked about at the back half of the top 10, pretty good at road courses. We don't really talk about him much as being great at road courses, but he has a road course win, and he always seems to be in contention at these road course races. So another good run for him, and I'm sure he's excited to kind of get the slate cleaned off once we start the playoffs.
And then we got Denny Hamlin, also not bad at road courses, also making some rumor mill stuff going on this week.
Yeah, he was really starting. So he used to be terrible at road courses, and then got decent at them. And then the next gen car showed up and wiped out his decency, and he was bad again. But now he gets his first complete race in a road course in the next gen car, finishes 2nd. Really good run, and like you said, making all sorts of rumor mill content this week. So that's always good to see.
Yeah. Let's talk about the winner heading to victory lane. Dominating performance. He led 66 of the 90 laps for his 5th win of the season. First career road course, which I was blown away by. I thought he had won one by now because he's always so good at them. 9th career win. Of course, we're talking about William Byron. Wow.
Yeah, so he went through this miserable 5-race stretch, 6-race stretch, whatever it was, of outside the top 10 each race. It was like, man, okay, they've kind of fallen on hard times here. They were the favorite for the championship, and now it's like, oh, what's going on? We're going to the playoffs, and nothing's happening here. And then they sneak up. They get a just butt kicking on the field there, and this changes things. I mean, he had been running, he'd gotten lots of poles at road courses and looked like he had shots at wins and stuff like that. Never panned out, but this just seems to be his year where things turn around, and now that's 5 wins for him this year. He only had 4 wins total coming into the season for his career. Now he's at 9 with 5 this year. I mean, I'm very impressed with what I've seen, and it's very, very obvious he's the one carrying the Hendrick flag this year. It just –
oh, yeah.
And they've got guys that it almost feels interchangeable. You know what I mean? Because you had Chase Elliott in 2020, just had a great year and won the championship. You had Larson the following year, 2021, had a great year, won the championship. And then you had, the missed year in 2022, but you're back at 2023, and now William Byron's the guy, most wins in the series, and it just looks like he's the guy. And if he can pull off a championship, that would be wild to have 3 out of the 4 Hendrick drivers currently that are all still very young with championships in their back pocket. That would be pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, Hendrick Motorsports as a whole, I mean, when the odds are with you, if you field 4 top-notch cars every week and top-notch drivers every week, if somebody has a bad year or bad week or whatever, the odds are with you.
They are the 14-time NASCAR Cup Series champions for a reason. They know what they're doing. And, by the way, this win puts them at 298 all-time in the Cup Series. They're 2 away from 300. That's pretty big.
And there's 11 races remaining. There's plenty of time to pick up a couple more.
Yeah, 11 races remaining, and they've got some really strong bullets in the chamber. So I would be surprised if we get through the rest of this year without 2 more Hendrick wins.
As long as they don't run out of gas.
Yes, that is the thing. And, oh my gosh, Alan Gustafson has been taking it in the shorts this week. Fans have been like saying, "Oh, fire him! He's the worst." I mean, come on! Like, everybody does make a mistake. Now, this is a bad mistake. I get it. It's a bad mistake. But
for sure,
this has been an entire season-long process. People are like, he's going to miss the playoffs because of this. No, he's not going to miss the playoffs because of this. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that led to where they're at right now, including broken leg suspension, lots of different things. So the fact they were even in conversation to point their way in before a crash at Michigan was very impressive. And now the fact that they're even still in the conversation and people were disappointed by running out of gas and stuff like that, I think speaks volumes to how good they've actually been despite all the challenges they've had this year. But for people calling for Alan Gustafson's job on Twitter and stuff like that, that is, or X, whatever you want to call it, that is just, I can't believe it. You've got the guy with the second most wins of any crew chief in the sport, and you're saying he's garbage and needs to be thrown out. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I don't understand. People are so short-sighted. They don't remember the 6 races or he was gone, the 7th race where he was suspended. That's why he's in the hole. That's why he's in the position he's in. That's why he has to win this weekend or he's not in the playoffs. And it has nothing to do with about the last few weeks.
Definitely. And so the thing, like, I was kind of, engaging with some of these fans on Twitter a little bit. I'm like, well, who did you replace him with? And somebody's like, literally anybody. Literally anybody. This is the guy that literally has the second most amount of championships of any active crew chief and the second most amount of wins as a crew chief. I just don't know. There's only one crew chief currently that has more wins than him, and that's Rodney Childers. So I don't know what you would replace him with.
I don't know either, but let's look towards Daytona International Speedway, last regular season race of the 2023 Cup Series season. We're going to check that out on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC. We've got to get to Rowdy Dragon. He is itching to. Oh, by the way, we're thinking about doing something different next week. We're thinking about taking Rowdy live.
Wow.
Yeah, we're trying to work out the logistics here, but we might actually see his face and actually talk with him and all kinds of stuff next week.
See, I'm excited about that because he's been a big part of the show since he's been brought in, and he's passionate. He knows what he's talking about, and I think that's awesome. If we can get him on the YouTube live and live on the actual show where we can talk to him and maybe rebut when he says that we are garbage at this fantasy racing thing, that would be good.
Well, we kind of are, so he's got a point.
he does have a very good point.
All right, Rowdy, let's cue that music up and let's get our fantasy picks for Daytona International Speedway this weekend.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Rowdy Dragon back again with this week's Final Lap Weekly Fantasy Update. Well, how'd y'all do over there at Watkins Glen? One more wild card track to go this week at Daytona, but before we look at Daytona, let's take a look at this week's stage winners. Our first stage goes to Lord Byron 24 fan. Second stage winner, Bushmaster 14. And Bushmaster 14 went on to win for the day, claiming 256 points, 75 stage points. Really well done there. 286 was the max on the day. Bushmaster missed it by one head-to-head pick. Almost nailed it. Good job. All right, taking a look at Rowdy, Toby, Carey, and our oh-so-generous sponsors. See how we did this week. Rowdy Dragon. Really rough day, probably one of my worst weeks of the year. Not a good day for me to have that. Finishing in the 188th position. And that slides me down to P7 in the standings. Now, before I go on, I just want to say that I made a big mistake with my lineup. And that's why it's important to pay attention to your lineups before you move on from week to week. I thought I had a William Byron left in my lineup, and when I went in to go put him as my driver, I saw a big fat red goose egg sitting there. Looks like I forgot to take him out in Richmond, or that didn't take when I did so. And it just sent my team this week into a downward spiral. So Rowdy's got some digging out to do. Anyway, like I said, slid down 4 positions into P7, thought it would be worse than that. All right, now moving on. Toby Christie finished in the 126th spot, sitting currently in 67th on the league. Kerry Murphy, Jimmy is back, tied with Toby, finishing in 126th, currently sitting 123rd in the league. Now looking at our sponsors, Joe Bike finished in 115th, currently sitting 26th in the overall standings. Louisville Max bested us all this week, finishing P25, currently sitting in 9th place. Devin, DL Racing King 11, finishing in the 79th spot, currently sitting in P138. Okay, we're heading out to Daytona this week, the last wild card for the regular season. Let's take a look at some drivers to pick or not to pick for your lineups. Starting with the 23 car of Bubba Wallace, he's got 12 races run at the track with an average finish of 13th. He's got 4 top 5 finishes and 4 top 10 finishes, finishing either in the top 5 or top 10 in 1/3 of his races. He's got 28 laps led and no wins. Looking at Bubba's stage point picture has him collecting stage points in 9 tries since the inception of stage points back in 2017. He currently has 0 stage wins. Now Bubba is a good place to start when it comes to super speedways. Since he's been with 23XI Racing, he has had an average finish of 10.9 at Daytona. In this period, his top 5 and top 10 average sits at 37.5. He's going to be one of the drivers who's fighting to claim as many points possible this weekend while not ending up in the eminent big one. Bubba has 3 DNFs, that's 25% of his races, 2 coming with the 23XI team. But as far as DNFs are concerned at Daytona, this is not bad. It shows he's putting himself in good position late in the races to capitalize on the melee or to stay ahead of the fray. He'll have to do everything possible to finish this race on Sunday to secure his spot in the playoffs. He will also have to stay in front of the pack to try to fend off any of the cut line racers that are trying to race their way into the playoffs by the way of a win. So consider Bubba for your lineup on Sunday. All right, a second driver to look at for this weekend is the 6 car Brad Keselowski. He's got 28 races run at the track with an average finish of 23.1. He's got 3 top 5 finishes and 6 top 10 finishes, finishing in the top 5 in 11% of his runs, and 21% of his finishes are in the top 10. He's got 339 laps led, averaging out to 12.1 laps led per race. He does have 1 win at the track and 2 dual wins as well. His stage point picture has him collecting stage points in 11 tries, 2 of those being stage wins. Brad is another guy whose name is synonymous with super speedways. He has 7 wins on this track type. He's another driver who'll be trying to defend his points position this weekend by trying to stay ahead of his immediate competitors. While Keselowski is a great super speedway racer, this weekend he'll have to play it somewhat safe to try and stay out of the calamity that can ensue on this track. That being said, he has 13, count them, 13 DNFs at Daytona alone. That is nearly half of his races. RFK has been looking good, showing great speed late in the season, and if the 6 can stay out of trouble, it should bode well for that team, securing their place in the playoffs. So the question remains, should you roster him in your lineup for Sunday? That really comes down to who you have left available and if you're willing to make the gamble on him finishing the race with the implied 46% fail rate. All right, our final driver to look at for this weekend is the 22 car of Joey Logano. He's got 29 races run at the track with an average finish of 17.4, finishing up in the top 5 in 7 of those races, averaging 24% up there in the top 5. He's got 10 top 10 finishes, averaging 34% of his races finishing up there in the top 10. Joey's got 246 laps led at the track and 1 win. Looking at his stage point picture, he has collected stage points in 20 tries, 5 of those being stage wins. Logano is another name that comes to mind when talking about the super speedway package. In the next gen car, his average finish is currently sitting at 7.0. To start the season off, he won the duel in Daytona running with a driver rating of 122.2. Joey has the perfect temperament for this race style as he can be cautiously aggressive. He does have those 7 DNFs, which after 29 races is just a 24% chance that another car comes home all twisted up. That being said, 24% is lower than the average driver's fail rate at Daytona. That seems pretty wild. Got a lot of wrecks here. So look for the Fords to be good this weekend. And if the 22 and his teammate in that 12 car, who is also a really good plate racer, lock bumpers, there's a good chance you will see them shoot to the front of the pack. All right, there you have it. Those are your driver picks for this week. Before I head out, I want to invite you over to take a listen to Rowdy Dragon's NASCAR Fantasy Sportsbook over at TobyChristieCom. Breaking down those head-to-head matches, trying to make things easier for you guys to make your decisions. So come on over to TobyChristie.com and click on that podcast tab and you're listening. All right, folks, that about does it here. Good luck this weekend trying to chase down Larson 2023. Really impressed with your picks. You've done some real good work spreading them out. And in P2, Troy Clark also. Both you two have been very impressive this season. Let's see how you can do in the playoffs. All right, guys, that does it for me here. So once again, thanks for hanging around and listening to the Final Lap Weekly Fantasy segment of the show. I am Rowdy Dragon. I'll talk to you again next week.
All right, there you go. Rowdy Dragon with your fantasy NASCAR picks for Daytona International Speedway. Last race of the regular season. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be crazy. One spot, right? There's only one spot.
One spot left. Right now, Bubba Wallace has it. Everyone else who's not in wants it. And the only way to get it now at this point, unless you can somehow outpoint him if you're Ty Gibbs, is to win a race. So you win this race, you're in. You don't win this race, it's probably going to be Bubba Wallace. So that's the situation we're in. Bubba Wallace, by the way, is no slouch at these tracks either. So
no.
He's finished second at Daytona 3 times. He's won Talladega. He's got to feel good going into this with the point cushion he has, knowing that if he finishes this race and does what he usually does, as long as one of these other guys doesn't win, he should be fine. He also has to feel like he has a shot to win, which has to feel pretty good for him. But there's always that nervous feeling of this is Daytona. I know not everybody does win at Daytona, but everybody can win at Daytona. And you're just hoping whatever ball that roulette wheel lands on this time, it is the person who's already won if you're not the guy who wins this thing.
Let's talk about that in a second. But first, Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski, is that right? They pointed their way in last week?
They are in. So they were in a nervous situation where if we had a first-time winner again at Watkins Glen, that they would be in a pressure-packed situation going into Daytona, where if we had one more, one of them would be out. But that is not the case. So we're good for those guys. They're locked in. And now Bubba Wallace is the guy on the bubble who has the pressure pack situation this weekend if we have a new winner.
And like you just mentioned a second ago, literally anybody in the field can win this thing. That's how competitive it's going to be. And those last few laps, it's going to take forever. They're going to wreck and wreck and wreck.
All bets are off when you get to the last few laps of Daytona. I mean, it's just so much can happen. And you start finding things too. Like the tandem draft was found in the last few laps at one of these things, one of those years where guys just hooked up and I was like, holy crap, they just went from like 30th to first in like a half lap. What happened? So it's one of those things where you don't know what you're going to see even in these closing laps when there's just so much on the line and just desperation's at an all-time level, just trying to make it in. You start seeing guys do things they don't usually do, and it leads to different things you don't expect. So between that and just people kind of just not giving and not taking and stuff like that, who knows? I mean, we're going to see craziness. I think we're going to see absolute craziness. I really do. I know with how boring Watkins Glen was, I feel this is going to be the complete opposite.
And I don't think I'd want to be the leader in the last two laps.
Well, the only good thing for the leader is, if you get to that white flag and something does happen that's screwy, you're the winner. So that's the one good thing. The bad thing is you are a sitting duck, and with so many people so desperate, if any of them are even close to where you're at on that last lap, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, not only so desperate, but it seems that driver etiquette is out the window this year. So
I do agree with that. Yeah,
your rear bumper is a target.
Yeah, and we've seen people, make aggressive moves at Daytona that are kind of questionable. Daytona 500 a few years ago, Austin Dillon on Eric Almirola there on the last lap. I think that comes to mind. Kind of, got into his rear bumper, spun him around, won the 500, and Eric Almirola's crashed. So we've seen a lot of questionable moves at Daytona. Drivers are selfish as a whole anyway. But when you have a chance at a playoff berth on the line by just nudging somebody out of the way, they're going to go for it. And I really don't know what we're going to see, but I'm sure we're going to be talking about it pretty heavily the week after.
And there's a lot of good drivers on the outside looking in. You look at Chase Elliott, obviously, Alex Bowman, Justin Haley has proven to do well at these kinds of races.
Yep.
Eric Almirola. I mean, there's a bunch, and that's just at the mid pack of the points here. I mean, Austin Dillon is 29th. He could win, and he's in.
Well, if you go back to the Daytona 500 as well, Chase Briscoe and Ryan Preece were both really good at Daytona earlier in the year. If they're good again, that possibly throws in a kink into the situation as well, as those guys are very far back in points. So a lot of good drivers who have had rough years can turn the entire narrative of their season around by winning randomly here at Daytona this week. And I think there's a lot of pressure on the line. Some of these guys' jobs probably depend on whatever happens in this race. So there is a lot to race for, and it's going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you go up and down this list and anybody has a chance, what do you like in terms of manufacturers?
So when you look at manufacturers, the Fords have done a really good job the last few years of working very well together. Chevy and Toyota kind of did a thing a few years back where they worked together during the 500 and it paid off. But outside of that, those manufacturers, for whatever reason, have not had the same kind of communication, the same kind of teamwork ship as the Fords. And so when you're thinking strictly of teams, I feel like the Fords get it and they understand it. But if these other manufacturers can look at things as a whole and go, you know what, guys, if we just really work together this time, we can get this thing done and we can possibly get one of our guys in. If they can all get on board with that, I think they'll be good. I think Denny Hamlin will work with Bubba Wallace pretty well. That's his team car. I think he understands what's at stake there. So I think from that aspect of things, Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin will probably be going max on helping Bubba Wallace. So from that side of things, I think there's a chance Toyota has something good going there. Chevrolet, though, I don't know, because even with the Hendrick group, you're split. You've got either Chase or Alex Bowman to help. Who are they going to want to help, and who are they going to, like, is it going to create hard feelings if they push one but not the other? So it's situations where
really that's going to that'll be a fun dynamic.
Yeah, so I really think Fords are the ones that have had this really down pat for several years, but I think Toyota will definitely be helping Bubba Wallace because there's just so few of them anyway to work with. And then you've got Ford that have just shown over the years they're very good at this whole teamwork thing at plate races.
So what are the rumors out there about Denny Hamlin?
So there's plenty. He's not re-signed yet for next year. He said this week that a lot of it's out of his control. He wants to be back. Joe Gibbs Racing wants him back. It seems like the snag is there with Toyota. So, and that all ties to his 2311 team, which has not been re-signed by Toyota for 2024 just yet. So that leaves things up to, if Denny Hamlin has to find another manufacturer for 2311, it's probably not going to be allowed to drive a Toyota next year, which then puts him in question on where he's going to be and what's going to be happening there. So there's a lot at play. I think my gut feeling it gets done, and I think they're back at 2311 with Toyota, and I think Denny Hamlin's back with Joe Gibbs Racing for another year with Toyota. That's my gut feeling.
Can Toyota really afford to lose two cars like that?
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know what the negotiations are. I don't know if somebody's asking for more money, different terms, what's happening. But at the end of the day, it's just a situation where, like you said, Toyota can't afford to lose them. They just got Legacy Motor Club into the fold, which was going to bring them from 6 to 8 teams next year, which they need desperately. So they've got to stick with it somehow. So I gut feeling it gets done in my mind, and I don't think this is an issue at all. I think just the fact that we're this far in is the only panic without it being done. But I think gut feeling it gets done. I don't see him moving to manufacturers. There's a lot of Ford rumors out there. I just don't see it. I really, truly think they stick with Toyota.
So what are we hearing about Eric Almirola? The guy was supposed to retire, and now he's rumored he's going to get fired. I mean, it's kind of weird.
It's all over the place, man. So it's very interesting. The guy's, he was supposed to retire at the end of last year and then decided to come back. And it's one of those things where a lot of what's happening over there on the Stewart-Haas and Ford side of things is really waiting on him. And it's one of those things where you get to a certain point, you haven't made a decision. I think somebody's going to have to make a decision for you because they've got to plan what's ahead for them as well. So I think internally they probably honestly know what's happening one way or the other there. They're not going to tell all of us yet, I don't think. But it is interesting that it does seem like the hold now is on Almirola yet again for another season.
Wow, crazy stuff. Do we want to stop and start another one?
Yeah,
I just got a running out of time thing.
Yeah, I got 9
10 minutes. Hey, we can finish in 10 minutes.
Yeah, we got
Let's just finish. How about a major race team in the truck series that are going to be no more next year?
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of makes sense with Legacy Motor Club, which is GMS pretty much, moving over to Toyota. And it seems like they're really wanting to focus on that Cup Series program. They will be shutting the GMS Racing truck program for next year. So that,
wow.
Yeah, that will be gone. So that's huge for Chevrolet because that's been a big thing for them for several years. Obviously, they have KBM in the fold now, which helps them. But you kind of have to wonder who's going to take over that GMS mantle as that other Chevrolet team. I think most people would expect Nice to get a little bit more of a funding from Chevrolet from the OEM there, but we'll see. I don't know. There could be a new name that pops in as well, but that is interesting news. I don't think it's very unexpected. It's just shocking to see it in print for once finally, because you kind of saw the writing on the wall that it would happen, but seeing it happen is different.
Yeah, for sure. Now, just to point this out, the Cup Series season is ending this weekend after this race, but not Xfinity and Truck. They still got a few more.
Well, so trucks are actually already in playoffs. They'll be going. Yeah, they'll be.
I knew it was Xfinity that was throwing me for a loop.
Yeah, so trucks are weird because they go in. They already went in a couple weeks back, and their schedule's so weird. They've got these big gaps throughout the playoffs and stuff like that where they're not racing.
They only have like 5 races a year anyway, so 3 of them have got to be like playoffs, right?
Right. So it's interesting. Now Xfinity, they've got a little bit shorter of playoffs as well because they've got 12 drivers instead of 16. So that's why their schedule, which kind of mirrors the Cup Series schedule, it's very close to it. That's why they're not quite in playoffs just yet. But yeah, so we're getting there. So Cup Series playoffs will start after this week, going into Darlington, and we'll have the full 16 driver field at the end of this weekend's race.
Wow. It's going to be a big weekend. I mean, I can't wait to see the excitement. I think we're going to see some stuff with qualifying and that sort of thing. We're going to see who's going to be, the cream is going to rise to the top, I think, for this one.
Definitely. And we've got some new teams out there too. So Beard Motorsports is there. Colleague Racing has a third car. So it seems like maybe they're trying to, have a little bit extra teamwork to get one of their cars in.
Right.
So there's these other things going on here where these teams are bringing in extra entries just to try to have a little extra help out there, it seems. So it'll be interesting to see who's where, who has what, who gets a push from who, and who can ultimately make their way into the playoffs if they can. I don't know. So we get, like we said, we get a person who's already won. We get William Byron back in victory lane. It's not going to matter. And you're probably going to have Bubba Wallace in the playoffs unless something weird happens early in the race for him. So it'll be fun. We'll have to see how it goes.
I think intense doesn't even begin to describe it.
No, and that's
awesome.
So the thing is, like, you can't even going into it. Like, usually going into a race, we can go, we know AJ Allmendinger is good at these road courses. He'll probably be pretty good. This guy's going to be, we have nothing. So we know the guys are usually good at plate racing, but even them, that's like 15th place average finish at these places. So you never know. You get a big one early in this race, and it could dramatically impact how any of this works out. You have a lap 2 20-car crash. We wipe out Bubba Wallace, but Ty Gibbs gets through it. Now all of a sudden it looks like maybe Gibbs is in on points, but now he has to sweat it out to make sure somebody else doesn't win this race as well. So there's a lot going on, and you will not know what the 16 driver playoff field will be until the final lap is completed. For
not even.
You might.
Like turn 4.
You might still be like,
It's going to be nuts.
It's going to be nuts. Pretty wild. Yeah, for sure.
Checkered flag is flying on this show. This has been the Final Lap Weekly. Catch us next week right here when we will recap the racing at Daytona and preview the beginning of the playoffs. And that will happen at Darlington and all the stories in between. Toby, you and I will chat next week.
We sure will. It'll be a good time.
And we'd like to thank our current list of Patreon paying people. Patreon.com/thefinallap. Join in on the giving fun.
and join the revolution. We've got tons of people here on this list. We mentioned the sponsors at the top of the show. Let's go through them once again. We've got Devin. We've got Louisville Max. Met him at Indianapolis. Super awesome dude. Met him and his family. Super great people. We've got David Letchworth. And, of course, we've got Joe Bike, the longest tenured sponsor of the show. Thank you, guys. And let's go through the entire list of Patreon subscribers that help us out and help build this show to what it is to this very day, where we're putting things out on YouTube, out on the interwebs, everywhere. So let's go through them all here. We've got Lalo. Thank you, Lalo. We appreciate you. Our freshest, newest patron that's not a sponsor. So thank you, Lalo. We appreciate you. We've got Robert Keene as well. Jimmy B, Mr. Jimmy James, 1983. We've got Quentin Whitaker. I should be meeting up with Quentin at Daytona this week, so that's really, really cool. I'm excited about that. We've got Simon Green from across the pond, Troy Clark from down under. We've got Peter Johansson, David Reed, James Maples II, Evan Taylor, Mike Hamilton, Nick Reed, Scott Clark, Justin Kapasinskis, he's the man, huge Kyle Larson fan, and we've got Charles K. Miller, longest tenured show listener that I'm aware of. If anybody's listening to us longer than that, I would be shocked. And Charles, I was supposed to meet you at Daytona earlier in the year. If you're at Daytona this time around, let me know. I will find a way to come find you and say hi. So let me know, Charles, and anybody else. If you're at Daytona this week, let me know, and we'll try to make something happen. But back to you, Kerry.
Patreon.com/thefinallap. Join in on the giving fun.
And
we appreciate every single one of you.
Yes.